We're constantly told to give value, share our knowledge, educate our audiences, answer questions, and demonstrate our expertise. But at what point does giving value become giving away the very thing people should be paying us for? So today, Dorothy and I are talking about the business of boundaries for service providers and the difficult question, how much should we actually give away? Dorothy, you work with entrepreneurs who are often carrying far too much themselves.
Mm.
Where do you see the line between being helpful and doing work that should actually be paid for?
Well, I think that's a great question. And I think the line isn't necessarily in how much information I'm giving. It's more about what I'm being asked to do with the information. So I can share what I know very generously, but when I start, diagnosing your specific situation, designing your strategy or reviewing your systems, troubleshooting the problems, or telling you exactly like, here are the steps, that's no longer education. That's stepping into consulting. And I think that that's where the line happens, that there was the
Oh, I
free
like that.
informative, and then
Consultation and consulting.
mhm, yep,
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
yeah, that resonates for me, and I think that that's where the distinction is. So free is more insight, education, perspective, possibility. Paid is when you're stepping into diagnosis, customization, and I don't mean diagnosis as like medical, just
Yeah,
for
no,
the
no.
record. Customization,
We do
strategy,
many
implement.
things.
She's not that kind of doctor. Um,
Yeah, I'm not that kind of doctor. Yes.
strategy, implementation, and accountability. And I think, I don't necessarily think that we need to be afraid of giving away too much, but I think that people can find YouTube, if in particular, you can find almost anything that's free, right? And I think it's not the information that's the scarcity anymore. Now it becomes a discernment is
Yeah,
the
the
scarcity.
implementation and
Hmm.
the integration.
Yep.
So if it's a general question, of course, like we love having those conversations, right?
Yeah.
And even like problem solving, strategizing. The minute it becomes, how would I do? Okay, then you know what? We're speaking integration and we're speaking, and it actually happened to me not too long ago that I was part of a service group, volunteering, right?
Hmm.
And the only thing that that I felt that I could volunteer in, in good faith and that would meet that I could do it on my free time was to like do their website, right, or do their social media.
Yeah.
And and I did, right, and they got like they got like a lot of freebies, right? And then I parted ways from the group because it was all their activities were during the day and I just couldn't attend, and anyway it just didn't make sense, right?
Hmm.
So I stepped away, and then I got a list of like updates, and if it's like a little tweak, like, oh, can you whatever, right, add a link to our new ticketing event or like something easy. But I got an email with like 12, 14, can you add a page, can you add a button, can you add blah blah? And I said, you know
No.
what, let me give you a quote.
Yeah.
And they got their knickers in a twist.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I'm no longer a part of the organization. I didn't renew, right? I gave
Hmm.
you notice that I wasn't renewing and that you should find somebody to do these or become a paid client, right? Um, and they got quite upset. And it's like,
Mm.
well, I'll give you an estimate. There's a minimum of whatever, right?
Yep.
And there's a bazillion people that can do this for you. And they will
Right.
do it more expensively, I can assure you, right?
Yeah.
But I don't do I just cannot, I cannot do it because before it was done on my free time, like for good community, spirit. But if it's on demand and you expect me to fit you in my schedule, then you ought to be a paid client.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, right?
Yeah. I mean, and I think we talked about this on a recent episode where it's kind of that difference when a client treats a contractor as an employee, right? There's a
Yes.
very different relationship, and it's kind of that same thing you're talking about with that gray area that, when you're still part of an organization, it's one thing, and there are certain benefits that come with that, and then when you step out of that role, hey, like now I have to send you an invoice because this is a different
That's
arrangement.
right. And so
Mm,
so what I found is I love that threshold, the consultation becoming consulting,
mhm.
right? And actually I think I will use it like, oh, it looks like our consultation has become consulting. Would you like me to quote you on it?
Yeah.
Or we went
Yep.
to consulting territory, can I give you a quote on it, right?
Yeah.
Because with professional services, because it's just I personally think that it's two things. One is that it's an intangible, right? It's
Mhm.
not like people are coming to eat at my restaurant for free, or they're coming to my store to gather clothing from the racks and expect to just walk out, right?
Right. Yep.
And yeah, and the second one is that they don't understand what it takes, right?
Yeah.
So for you to say, you know what, that's going to be 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, like, what like we were talking about it, like, a
Mhm.
website that got quoted, it was a spec was given, the person expected 29 pages to be activated on it and for it to be the same price, and it's like,
Doesn't
no.
work that way.
It doesn't work that way, right? And because they don't understand, and rightly so. I mean, I guess it would be like a surgeon saying it's a 24-hour surgery, and you're going, really? That long? Like, who are you to question the people that know what they're doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and I love technology for that, because you can easily go into any of the AI models or modes or whatever apps, and do a price comparison.
Yeah.
And I actually, after I've quoted jobs to clients, recurring clients, I will always run a comparative pricing on it, depending how much the engagement is. I'll run a comparative pricing and I will send it to them.
Mhm.
And I said, this is just for your peace of mind, right? Like,
Yeah.
for you to know that whatever. And I find if somebody's going to get upset, listen, you studied for you, like, the Picasso. Yeah, we spoke about this, the Picasso thing, that
Yeah.
you can draw something in 3 minutes, but it's like, no, it took me 50 years to be able to draw something in 3 minutes, right? You're not paying for the 3 minutes, you're paying for the 50 years. and
That's right.
and I think, as a service provider or consultant or anybody like that, even as an employee, like, in I know we're freelancers and or consultants, business owners, entrepreneurs, call it whatever you like. There's an actual difference between all of them, but for today's conversation,
Yeah.
um, you know, even as an employee, I think a lot of professionals shortchange themselves in
Mhm.
thinking that, the company is doing you a favor by hiring you and paying you a salary. But it's like, no, they are buying your knowledge.
Yep.
They are buying your knowledge.
Yep.
And you ought to treat it with the worth that it deserves.
Mhm.
Right. and
Yep.
and it's the same with services. So what do you find, so after someone keeps asking or keeps coming back for more and more and more, um and you say, can I quote you on that? Or whatever, how do you follow that up, right? If they get upset or if there's pushback, what would you do? You're a lot nicer than I am.
Well, I've gotten to a point over the past couple of years where, thanks to the help of AI helping me hold some boundaries more strongly, I guess I would say, I have actually asked for its impartial, like, look at the situation and like, hey, am I misreading this? And getting it from a couple of different models and just like making sure I'm not the one that's a little like, woohoo,
Yeah,
right?
'cause
Making sure.
thank you, because sometimes we can
Mhm.
also buy our own press, right?
That's right. That's right. So part of it is that, part of it is looking at it impartially with some, and a computer is about the most impartial I could get. Um, and once I have a better footing and understanding of, okay, like I am reading this correctly, then I will go back and just, look, here's the situation. This falls under this kind of purview, this kind of arrangement. And, if I were to provide this, you would be needing to engage me in a contract, right?
Yes.
And like just holding that, and I do a lot better with that kind of situation in writing than I do in a face to face, because generally speaking, I have a very grounded and very laid back manner, and so in a client setting,
I'm
that can
very
sometimes,
generous. Yeah.
yes, and that
And,
can be
and
taken advantage of.
and you and I are like that, we get excited. So
Yeah.
it's like, so we'll always do more, right? It's like, well,
Yep.
what else can I do? Right? Like,
Yep.
what
Yep.
does this button do? And like before you know it, we've turned something fairly simple into something not so simple
That
anymore.
29-page website becomes
Yeah. Oh,
42
good
pages,
Lord.
right?
Yes. Somebody submitted a manuscript for review to our publishing that is 95,000 words.
Wow.
95. And it's not that it's wrong. Many novels, but it's a novel. It's not the
That's
type
a
of
lot.
books that we,
Mm, yeah.
that we normally publish.
Mhm.
And it's not even knowing what to, because it's not, is we don't publish novels. You know what I mean? We publish nonfiction business because it's going to be utilized within a business nurturing or a business branding, right?
Mhm.
But so you do encounter areas that you don't know, and you may underprice just to get into a sampling, right? Like a real
Yeah.
sampling. But you got to be careful. In another area that I find service providers, I'm going to say struggle, but that might be a little harsh, but it's kind of like a fuzzy area, is when you are supposed to showcase what you can do with like free webinars or like free downloads or any kind of free giveaway.
Mm.
But where is the limit between what you ought to be charging for your knowledge and what you're giving away for free in the context of nurturing a lead, right? Or lead generation. Do you find that difficult to discern?
I mean, I think I don't know how exactly to describe it, but I think it's kind of like when I bake bread, the end result is a loaf of bread. My process in getting there is
Mhm.
probably very different from many other bread makers. And that's what makes my bread, right? And I think the same thing is true in business. And if you want the end result of the bread, you have to pick the modality in which the way that you get there. And I think that particular person's flavor on how they spin, okay, like this is part of the free ecosystem. And then at this rung, you now have to pay.
Mhm.
Right. And I think there are different
You
schools
have
of
to have
thought.
a clear
eh,
gate
very clear.
where this becomes free, where the advertising,
Yep.
right? Where the advertising and promo and education ends
Yes.
and the real consultation begins. And they usually
Yeah.
say, the biggest challenge that I get told all the time is, how do you transition from free value to paid consultation to full service, right? Is that
Yep.
nurturing sequence.
It
And
is.
I find a lot of times, I know with PWT, right, we got three levels of service. And sometimes people have, a lot of money, like they're at a different, like their business is doing well, they're like seven figures or whatever, and they'll want to buy the top package. I'm like,
Hmm.
why don't you start with, you know, because they don't know how we work, right?
Right.
They don't know that all of our work is done with you.
Yeah.
So if you're expecting done for you, we're not your right partner.
That's
You
right.
know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's really, not everyone can be your client. And yes, it's hard to turn money down. I get it. Like, what
Yeah.
entrepreneur turns money down? But if it's not the right fit,
Mm.
it's going to just end in frustration for both the client and yourself.
And I think you're hitting on something that, speaks to, like, we don't talk about, right? Like turning work down can also be a service, because what ends up I have found happens is I might not be the right fit for somebody right now, but I may be the right fit for them down the road. Or they'll remember that conversation and say, "You know what? She was really honest and she's a straight shooter." And that can earn you a lot of, the street cred, right? And like that will
Oh,
tell other.
integrity.
Totally.
Mhm.
Totally. And I think that it's an unspoken value that is underrepresented in the market, right? I mean, I think and I'm not to say like people are shady or anything like that, but I'm just saying, like, I think that there's a lot to be said about having integrity and doing things. And I'm not saying don't color outside the lines, but I'm just saying, like, in presenting yourself in a way that, hey, like, I'm not your person, but you know what? Like, Carolina is probably a better match and she knows how to do X, Y, and Z. And I highly recommend her, which is why having collaboration partners and, other types of
And
partnerships
sometimes
with
even
people.
personality too, right?
Totally.
Like there's
Totally.
certain personality, like I am a creative, right brain person
Mhm.
that not hokey, I hope, but if something doesn't feel right, I
Yeah.
don't particularly care if we said we were going to issue something by the first week in August. If 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 you're going to come across tone deaf, or it's not the right time for the topic, or like
Yeah.
it's worth waiting. Like,
Yep.
what we do is back to the surgeon. I don't know why. Knock on wood, I'm not going to end up in surgery, because that seems to be the word of the day. We're not doing heart surgery. This is,
Right.
we're speaking about, yes, automation, AI, publishing, visibility, things that matter, right? But
Mhm.
unless we're talking about, I don't know, a Christmas package that I'm going, oh, I will do it in January or February. Like some things you gotta use common sense, but other stuff, not everything is, you gotta have long-term vision,
Yeah.
and trust the expert, trust that the person you've hired know what they're talking about and they're preparing you for it, right?
Mhm.
So
Yep.
yeah, as a it's funny because we use DISC as communication assessments for our clients, and in a certain part of our business, especially all of the wellness and the caring and the nurturing people, they're normally their communication about money and about finances is not their area of comfort. Not everyone, but many. So they end up wanting to do the right thing at their own personal expense,
Yeah.
right? Because it's easy to dispense, especially if you're a therapist, if you're a relationship coach, if you're, is at least with AI and IT, when you're doing a website, right? When you're in front doing something, creating something. But when it
Yeah.
is human services, sometimes you don't even realize you just default into, you know, therapy mode.
Yep.
And sometimes A, that's not what the person wants, and B, okay, once you might touch on the topic, but if every time you get together, the doctor has to be in because therapy's in session, you got to
Becomes a
evaluate that
problem.
relationship,
Mhm.
because this could
Yep.
be your free time
Yep.
for mental health and for rejuvenation, and now you're spending it in more therapy, right? So
Yeah.
that is, this is where delegation, and this is where the work that you do really matters, right? In
Mm.
knowing, well, you tell it, you wrap the segment and you say, what automation can you put in place to make it easier to communicate boundaries?
Well, I mean, one of the easiest ones I did late last year was putting an autoresponder on my email. And it basically outlines my productivity and like how I work. And you won't maybe get a response from me right away. If it's urgent, here are the rules and this is what I need you to do, and put an urgent in the subject line. And, like I give instructions very explicitly in this email, and I explain how you can expect to get a response back from me. And I'm in the office at this time and this time. And being really clear. That's one of the most powerful ways I have put a boundary in place, and I get responses back from people that are like, "Oh my gosh, I love that so much." And I know those are my people because they respect and honor and see the boundary versus
And
some
you
people
don't
who are
have
like,
to agree. You don't
"Right.
have to agree, but
That's
you
right.
do need to respect.
That's right." Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
Mhm.
Brilliant. And of course, we'll put the links to all your assessments, know what kind of
Yes.
delegator you are, and all the incredible things that you're working on. Thank you, Dorotha. This was
Thank
a little
you.
short, but we're on a tight deadline right now. So, yes. Speaking of deadlines. Anyways,
That's right.
thank you, everybody. And until next time, remember your boundaries.
That's right.
Bye. Bye.